Hello, lovely people, and thank you for joining me for season 2. Sorry for the long wait, but I had to come up with stories and a plot for what season 2 is going to be when season 1 was basically all symptoms. So, season 2 is going to be all about college and the college experience from my point of view. And what better way to start college than with Rush? I'm Leah Batlle-Rafferty, and this is Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. So I know some of you are probably thinking, well, wait, Rush? Like, did you go into a sorority? Were you in a fraternity? Like, why would you rush? In the school that I went to, rush was something that I think most people were invited to do. It wasn't necessarily just about rushing fraternities. There were living groups as well. And some of the dorm preferences also came down to a sort of ranked voting type thing where you would choose which dorm you might want to end up in. So the dorms also sort of rushed in a way. So it was everybody involved. Let me start at the beginning. So I came off the airplane in Boston, sight unseen of the university that I was going to. And I guess at this point, I might as well just say that I went to MIT. You know, we didn't have a ton of money. It was the early 90s. And it wasn't as common then, I think, to go and tour colleges before you actually decided to go to them. So MIT, for me, was a complete mystery. At the time, I was really excited about it. You know, I don't think I knew a lot of my quote-unquote autistic tendencies, but I was really into going places and seeing new things and adventures. But I think most of my adventures had been sort of short-term or with my family. And we'll talk about all that later. But either way, you get off the plane and there's a group of people and they are sort of greeters that meet you at the airport and wait until a bunch of you have shown up. And then you get into a bus and then they take you over to the school. Now, you know, it's been over 30 years. So do I remember in order everything that happened? No. I know that I was put into a dormitory called New House, which was sort of all the way at the end of the rows of dorms at that time. It seemed really cool. There were a lot of people playing like D&D and like board games and stuff in the living room sort of area, the common area. So there were people playing board games a lot in the common area. And originally I thought, hey, I'm comfortable here. I'll stay here. This is cool people, right? I wasn't thinking about rushing. I've got that thing that I didn't know then of like, oh, if I land someplace safe and soft, then I'm not going to become more adventurous and try for something else, right? So my thought was, I'll stay at New House and I'll go have a whole bunch of fun during rush because it looked like there were a lot of cool activities, and then I'll just stay here. Like, that'll be that. That's not what happened, but that was my thought. There was a sort of, you know, welcome to MIT sort of thing where we were all in front of the Great Dome, I think. Don't quote me on that. I think it was in that courtyard in front of the Great Dome. Maybe it wasn't, but I think it was. And, you know, they gave us a whole rah-rah, welcome to you. You know, a ton of you are valedictorians and salutatorians. Anyways, not me. Definitely not me. So I'm listening to this. I'm a little intimidated, but I'm standing next to the coolest woman. I mean, she was fantastic. She and I hit it off right away. There was a third person that joined us, a guy, and she was really interested in the sororities. Now, at MIT at the time, there were only 4 sororities, and I think only one of them actually had a house. So they were events in the student center where you would go and kind of meet with the sororities and stuff like that. And so she asked if I wanted to come along. And at the time I was like, sure, I'll go along. But the event wasn't till much later. So we decided to do other activities first with this other person. And so we all went around, did a couple things. Here's where I start to lose track of what happened, when, and where. But sometime during that day, we went to see this fraternity, which is the fraternity that I've talked about in the past, I think. And they had like lunch or something at the Border Cafe in Boston. And so we all went. And it was during this time that just like things were odd. I've never been a person who flirts. And I honestly have never been in any sort of like quick dating scenarios. So things were odd for me. I remember being really surprised that this one guy ordered milk while we were there. He was one of the upperclassmen. And so I said that. I said, hey, that's really cool. My personal bias, I don't know how I said it. My personal view on fraternities based on, everything I'd seen was that, people would have drinks and it's kind of cool that you ordered milk. And, this is me babbling like I used to. And from everything I've been told, he took that as flirting. Okay. All right. That was not flirting. But I guess if normal people said that, it would be flirting. No idea. But either way. So that happened. And then in the line, I guess, to get in, I don't know if it was there or somewhere else, but I think it was there. There was another guy from the fraternity. And he's a guitarist, I guess. And we're talking music. And I bring up the fact that in my mind, as much as I adore Billy Joel, I don't like We Didn't Start the Fire, because it feels like it was taken from It's the End of the World as We Know It. And he's like, well, they're very different music and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but the idea, the thought behind that song was so unique that Billy Joel took it, and it feels like it was an attempt to remake that. I don't know. Anyways, point is, he kind of nods. He's like, I can see that. And I'm thinking, well, no, it's okay. You're being polite. Fine, whatever. So that happens. But other than those two things, in general, the guys are really cool. We're having a really great time. We get back to their house. I don't know, some other stuff might happen later. And we're all chatting. And it's been hours, so I'm getting comfortable, and this is the problem, right? I'm getting comfortable, and she goes, oh, it's time to go to that sorority thing. Do you want to come? And, in my head, I'm thinking, wow, that's a long walk. I'm really comfortable here. People are being very nice. And I end up not going. And to this day, there are very few things that I have like moments that are stuck in my head. And I regret that, because she was so nice and so cool. And maybe I wouldn't have ended up at a sorority, and I probably wouldn't have, but I could have at least walked with her, and gone in and seen what it was like. Later, years later, I saw that she had become like social chair at her sorority and clearly had gotten into what she wanted, and that was awesome for her. So either way, okay, so it's rush week. That happens. I'm very sad. The other person in our group stays with us. I think he decided to rush that fraternity we were hanging out at. And I find out that next door there's a women's living group. I'm like, okay, well, these guys are so chill. I wonder if the women next door are also as chill. And I think one of the guys actually mentioned it to me. And I'm like, okay, I'll go over. So I did do a little bit of rushing over there. It was a lot more feminine, of course. I think there was a little bit more food, a little bit more hanging out in like a living room or something like that. don't remember all the things about Rush in either location, right? I just remember very key moments. And I remember sometime in the next few days, and I couldn't tell you when, there's this weird thing that happens during Rush. Everything moves really fast, but at the same time, it's slow. Like it feels like you've been there weeks and you've only been there 3 days. It's mind boggling. So I hang out at the fraternity again, and this one guy who I'd kind of been hanging out with, and I really don't know the order of when this happened, and it bugs me that I don't, but it was either that day or the day after. He goes, "Hey, why don't you take a walk with me?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure. Let's go for a walk." It's really loud. I'm as social as I can be. I am an introvert, so like walking quietly sounded good. This guy seemed to be my friend, or at least starting to become my friend. And we start to walk, and then suddenly he kisses me. And I'm totally caught unaware. I did not, like, I know that a lot of people who probably had a very different mindset or who had maybe weren't autistic would have caught on to what was going on. I didn't. I honestly didn't. I just thought we were going for a walk. Anyways, he kisses me. He tastes like cigarettes. My dad was a huge smoker when I was little. It took him a long time to quit. And so the smell and the taste of cigarettes are something that really, really just throws me off. I get migraines from cigarette smoke nowadays. Anyway, so he kisses me. He tastes like cigarettes. I probably have a shocked look on my face. We get back and he's upset at me. And I think he stays upset at me for the rest of my college career. I did not know what was going on. I wouldn't have taken a walk if I did. Anyways, not mean. Didn't try to force anything on me, but definitely a very awkward situation. And I think right around that time is when I started to kind of be like, I really don't know a lot about flirting. And I started to get uncomfortable already with the idea of creating situations that I wasn't aware I was creating and having people assume that I was flirting when I wasn't. I'd already had some bad experiences, a few years before. And this just solidified the fact that I would not be flirting with people. And if I thought that they might even think I was flirting, that I would stop. Anyways, so that happened. And the whole repelling thing, I think, was that week too. So I've talked about how the adrenaline rush, and it was like that I had a huge fear of heights and that I wanted to overcome my fear. And so this guy set up this repelling thing. I'm pretty sure it was during Rush of that year. Maybe not. Maybe it was a following Rush, but I think it was that year. Anyway, so I did a lot of new things, tried a lot of new experiences, but still physically, I settled on a location and had a hard time moving away from it. I ended up in the women's living group, moved all my stuff in, shared a room with another woman. It was kind of lucky because at the time, a lot of places were very, very full or were getting full, and it was hard to get in. So the fact that we could move in as a freshman was really cool. And of course, there were other things happening during that week that had nothing to do with fraternities or sororities or anything like that. I got introduced to my advisor, who was fantastic. He was this awesome literary professor, and I almost immediately changed my mind on what I wanted to do before I got a scolding from my parents, who were less than impressed at the idea of me wasting my scholarship at MIT on literary work. So there was that. He was fantastic. We did all kinds of like student trust falls and one of those weird Guinness Book of World Records things that they try to get all the freshmen together in the quad to do. There was a lot of information about classes, and there were other things like tours of the grounds and weird underground tours that I wish I had done. So like there was like the hacker tour for people who actually wanted to do the weird hacks that you see on top of the Great Dome. They show you all the background things. And there were also other like tours of areas and fun places to eat and, Rocky Horror Picture Show. And we got told what the smoot things on the Harvard Bridge were. And there was just so much. It was drinking from a fire hose in at the time was felt like the best way, but it was probably not. It was probably very hard to retain everything that was getting thrown at you between rushing different places to live, learning about the school, getting your books and everything, learning about the culture, figuring out Boston for somebody like me who'd never been there before. It was a lot. It was a lot. I felt very happy, I think, at the beginning where I ended up. I felt like I would be in a good place. I felt like I would be in a safe place. And I think that's it. I think there was like a cruise that we did, like an aquarium trip that was also part of Rush that I went on. And that's where I met my boyfriend, who I dated for about 2.5 years. And we'll talk a little bit about that situation and relationships in college later. But yeah, so I met him as well. And yeah, welcome to Rush. Welcome to MIT. Welcome to my experiences at MIT. I know I make it sound like only like bad things happen, but no, there were a lot of fun things that occurred. The problem is that the weird ones are the ones that stick out in my head, right? We went to dinners, we might have gone to a show or two. And you may also ask, wait, why is everyone in Rush? Well, at the time, at least, the university, MIT, it's an institute. I always wondered whether college, anyways, the institute, it didn't have enough housing for all the students. And so it actually very much counted on the Greek system to house everybody. So we all tended to take part in Rush. I can't tell you how many fraternities they were, but they were definitely above 20. And like I said, there were 4 sororities, and I knew of at least 2 living groups, I think, where it basically wasn't anything to do with the Greek system, but they were still places to live off campus where you kind of policed your own group of people. You might have like a dorm advisor sort of person who helped you out. You tended to help with your own dinners, that kind of thing. So anyways, that is Rush. And I will tell you a little bit about some of the schooling, like the actual academic stuff and the trauma that bookended my college, university, institute, whatever career in the next episode. Thank you for tuning in to Memoirs of a Neurodivergent Latina. This podcast was written, edited, and produced by me, Leah Batlle-Rafferty. All music is by Carlos Neda. To send us an email, feel free to send to moanl@labratsolutions.com. That's MOANL@labratsolutions.com. And our website is www.moanl.com. And this podcast is part of Labrat Solutions, Inc.